Hello and welcome to the gameplaycasts review for the survival strategy game Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown. Developed by Gamexcite and published by Daedalic Entertainment, Across the Unknown allows you to take control of Voyager's journey through the Delta Quadrant as you try to get the crew back home to Earth. Anyone familiar with the Voyager TV series will instantly recognise many of the game's storylines, arcs and characters. And in fact, you pick up at pretty much the first episode of the series, following Voyager becoming stranded by the caretaker 70,000 light years from home. What immediately caught my eye about this game was its unapologetic commitment to the old school PC strategy game vibe, combined with the 23rd century aesthetic next-gen Voyager and DS9 made so iconic. I love a good old strategy game, and one set in one of my favourite sci-fi IPs was always going to be of interest. The game features 12 procedurally generated quadrants to survive through and explore, all the while dealing with various quests, story missions, and characters pulled directly from the show. Voyager itself needs to be maintained and improved as you progress in order to balance the needs of the crew, its ability in combat, and the available options and abilities for missions and resource gathering. Much of the mission gameplay is text-based, but don't let that put you off. I found it to be quite engaging, especially when combined with the internal ship construction and the ship-to-ship combat. Though, don't be fooled, the combination of chance and difficulty means a few wrong decisions can lead you to a warp speed reload if you aren't careful, so make sure you read the options properly. So, in this strange world where the Star Trek franchise has taken more damage than the Federation did at Wolf 359, does this game boldly go where few Star Trek games have gone before? Well, aye Captain, I think it does. Equally, it would only be logical for you to keep watching to seek out Across the Unknown's score out of 10. The first thing that really jumps out when you load the game up is the classic theme tune from the series, a ship porn worthy shot of Voyager and a menu in the LCARS style synonymous with 90s Trek. The thematics set the tone early, drawing me into that next-gen world I know and love. I think you can normally tell when game creators are actual fans of the show for which a game is based upon, and for me, this was certainly evident throughout this game. There are little details everywhere, the ship overview screen being a console panel, Voyager actually orbiting the planets on the system view. These elements combined with the choices and nostalgia throughout make it a really good homage to the TV show that fans will certainly appreciate. It's all too common these days for studios to land a big IP and then try to put their stamp on it or tell their story, instead of trying to stay true to what the IP's original creatives wanted and what the fans expect. Happily, Gamexcite has treated Voyager with all the care and respect due to a Star Trek franchise, unlike a certain Mr. Kurtzman. Anyway, as I briefly mentioned in the introduction, I really like the old school strategy nature of the game and how easy it is to pick up and play. Yes, you have to read text on the screen, and the game doesn't play itself for you. Scary, I know. But, and I seem to say this in a lot of my videos, not every game has to be some highfalutin, uber-slick graphical CGI fest. For me, most of the fun of gaming is the challenge associated with the gameplay and how immersive the overall experience is. This is probably why proper strategy-based games have become the bread and butter of the indie PC game. They aren't for the masses, but they can still be great games, and in my opinion are still some of the best games ever devised. And let's be clear, I am by no means putting Across the Unknown into the best strategy games ever category, but I am saying it's a solid strategy game made the old-fashioned way, which gets a big old tick in the box from me. There are 4 core game mechanics that make up the main gameplay loop: the top level resource and crew status management, the Fallout Shelter style ship development, the away/text adventure choice missions, and the ship-to-ship combat. While none of these elements are particularly deep by themselves, the whole is larger than the sum of its parts. Together, they add some variety and keep you engaged and moving forward. I particularly enjoy the Fallout Shelter-esque ship development, which is paired with a technology research tree. This allows you to configure the interior of Voyager for high morale or combat, or even for a high number of Borg rooms, should you desire it. Clearly, I tried to balance both morale and combat ability, but it was no easy task, given the limited resources and time. This nicely brings me onto the game's difficulty. Unlike the mass media, I like games that aren't afraid to offer players a challenge, In fact, the more I think about it, the more I wish games would just adapt the Elden Ring approach of just designing the game with a single difficulty that is how the devs wanted the game to be played. Yes, it's not accessible for everyone, but every game is not meant for every player. Anyway, I digress. Across the Unknown certainly doesn't hold its punches. On the Standard and Year of Hell difficulty, the game can change your fortunes rapidly, taking you from an intact happy ship to a battered and mutinous one in the blink of an nacelle. Rather than being super frustrating though, I found I was still able to weather the storms and make it through to the next sector, making it an interesting challenge rather than an unwinnable grind. There are, however, some trebles in the system. The clunkiness of some of the controls, interfaces and options being an obvious one. They don't spoil the experience, but given how basic the game is in many respects, it's a shame they haven't added slicker controls and options. The two big ones for me are having to press escape to close any window in order to move to another screen. I found myself trying to jump to the ship or system screen and nothing happening because a window's open. The clumsy saving options can also be frustrating. They did improve these almost immediately by adding a manual save option, but initially if you died, I think you have to go right back to the start of the sector. I don't mind them making it unforgiving in that sense, but it is a bit harsh when it's based at times on a random roll of the dice that you can do nothing about. And I think they need to sit down and put in some basic quality of life options to make things a bit slicker. In a similar vein, while appreciated, the combat system is extremely basic, and it is quite easy to confuse. I've been in battles where Voyager gets stuck on one side of an opponent, and the computer can't seem to figure out a course to the other side, which results in the two ships almost getting tangled up, and you taking a lot more damage than you should. It's a great idea to give the player that element of ship-to-ship combat, it just needs a bit more polish to work as intended. Functional but basic is how I would describe it currently. Hopefully it's something they can patch going forward. Equally, it's far too easy to just straight up fail a lot of the submissions based largely on pure chance. It can be quite annoying and pointless when this happens. I think given the resources and heroes used throughout, it would have been a more interesting experience if these elements had been integrated a bit more thoroughly. So you could, for example, assign multiple heroes or add resources to improve success chances, making things a bit more dynamic. Currently the biggest difference is based on the levels of Voyager's rooms, which is quite one-dimensional and just encourages players to save before a side mission and reload if it goes peaked on. I think my last issue, and yellow alert for contradicting myself, but bear with me here. I think each of the game's 4 elements lack depth. This translates into the overall game playing more like a series' greatest hits from the Voyager TV series than a new adventure game. What I mean is that it very much feels like the game is on parallel rails to the series, and whatever options you choose, you will still end up on the same or similar path. I definitely enjoyed the combination of elements, and I stand by my earlier statement that the variety held my interest, but I can't help feeling that some systems needed a bit more polish and thought to take the experience to the next level. The building blocks are there, they just needed to add some more meat to the bone. Overall then, this is a good old-fashioned survival strategy, made with love and respect for the original IP. It certainly has its flaws and imperfections, which keep it from assailing the lofty heights of greatness. That said, it delivers where few Star Trek games have gone before, and I really enjoyed my time playing through the game. There is a good enough mix of gameplay variety, challenge and fan service to please the Trekkie within, and remind you how Voyager, despite Captain Proton and Tuvix, was still probably better than anything made since Enterprise. So how does Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown stack up? Is it worthy of the IP, or should you be taking some evasive manoeuvres? The logical score for this game is an IGN out of 10. Or in other words, a 7 out of 10. It's a good game that delivers on its promises. This is the strategy experience I was expecting, and as a fan of Star Trek and Voyager, I was certainly not disappointed. There is undoubtedly potential here, and something the studio would be crazy not to build upon. As I've mentioned previously, there's a decent amount of variety in the gameplay mechanics, though each individual element could do with a bit more depth and polish to take the game to the next level. Though the overall experience is still value for money and a great homage to the TV show. I sincerely hope Gamexcite continue to improve and update the game, and boldly aim to bring strategy back to where it belongs. A next generation style game like this would also be a fascinating prospect. And with that, it's time to bring this captain's log to a close. Set phases to stun, and as always, Erebus.